All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here on the Consistency Corner podcast. And I know I say every week, but you guys, I'm consistent here. I'm excited for our guest today and our topic. And we talk a lot here about marketing, but with every single client that I work with and every single strategy I put in place around marketing, I know, and I certainly hope all my clients know, that mindset is really important as the foundation of any strategy that we have. So when I connected with our guest today, Jen Patterson, to talk about money mindset, I knew that this was going to be really helpful because mindset and strategy absolutely have to work together to make us, get us the results that we want. And when it comes to money, what I found with my clients is that we either have to spend time or money or both on our marketing. And so having a good handle on our mindset before we make those investment decisions can be really helpful in making sure that we make the right decisions. And then we're not just, going with a gut feeling because a marketer sold us a fancy thing or a shiny object, because marketers are typically good at marketing. So I'm excited to get in this conversation today. Jen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I love what you said about the shiny object. Like it's something that happens to all of us. Like I have definitely been that person who is invested in the shiny object, and lo and behold, it was a shiny object.
Yes, I literally just like last week, I was talking to my bookkeeper and she had a transaction that she was like, "Hey, what is this for?" And I was like, "Oh, it was a 23-day challenge to try to get more clients." And it was dumb and I shouldn't have bought it. But like, I fell for it. I fell for the thing because
Mhm.
marketers are good at marketing. And I actually should have known better that, hey, if it's $23, you get what you pay for. And it's probably not going to be great. And that's fine. But, lesson learned there. But, you are the founder of Dollar Divas, which is a money coaching company that supports female entrepreneurs or mompreneurs who need financial assistance with their business, which I've never met a business owner who doesn't need financial assistance, at least in the beginning, but often much longer. So, with more than 12 years of experience, you've mastered the psychology of money and the step by step process of growing a business and the art of creating financial stability, which I think is what we all really want. So, tell me a little bit more about your journey and how you got to where you are today in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. So money has always been the center of my career. I was always that, lone girl in the economics class, and I just loved learning about money. I loved the idea that money is both very practical, but it's also incredibly emotional. The way we like to think we make financial decisions based on logic and reason and things, but really at the end of the day, it comes down to our psychology and our emotions. And I think that, you know, interplay of those two things is absolutely fascinating. So, I've always been in the money sector, and I was a financial advisor for a number of years, and I worked with a lot of business owners. And when we sort of dug into their finances, I kept seeing the same trends over and over and over again of people who had a successful business, had no trouble bringing in clients, had no trouble, getting results, whatever line of work they were in, everything from plumbers and carpenters to lawyers and massage therapists. It was all very similar um, trends. And it was that, their business was thriving. But when you looked at their finances, it didn't mirror what was happening in their business. And usually it came down to the fact that they were great at what they did, but they didn't understand how to manage the money side of the business because it's a completely different skill set. Making money and managing money are completely different skill sets. And so, when we sat down and said, okay, here's how you do this step by step, usually they were like, oh, well, no one's ever taught me this stuff before. No one's ever gone through this because I went to school to learn my trade. I learned my trade, but I didn't learn this part of being a business owner because no one talks about it. So at that point, I was like, okay, there's clearly a need here. So that was when I started working in the coaching sector and kind of how I got to where I am now.
Yeah, I've talked to so many service providers that are in that boat, that like they're great at what they do, they're great at their craft, their trade, their profession. They probably went to school for it. They have certifications, but nobody ever taught them how to run a business. And it
No,
is a completely different skill set. And not that you necessarily have to go get an MBA, but you do have to get the information because you don't know what you don't know.
exactly. You're absolutely right. And I always liken it to sort of driving a car.
Mhm.
You know, if you handed the keys to of a Ferrari to a 16-year-old with no prior experience, they're probably not going to get very far. You know, someone's going to muddle through and figure it out. Someone's going to wrap it around a tree, but most people are going to just stay in the driveway because they can't figure out how to get it into first gear. And that's the same thing with managing money. It's not a hard skill to learn.
Mhm.
It's just you need someone to show you the ropes
Yeah.
and get you going so that you can, figure out what works for you. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing, when it comes to money management is, there's so many gurus out there that are like, well, this is the way to do it. This is the only way to manage money. And I'm like, well, is it though? Because is every business the same? Is every person the same? Do our brains all work the same? No. I mean, we're learning more and more how wildly different everyone's brains are. And so having a one size fits all solution isn't the way to have financial success with everybody. You need to
Yeah.
figure out what works for you. So having someone like me kind of walk you through like these are the things that you need to kind of get set up, and then having that knowledge, that foundation, then you can tailor your financial strategy to your business, your life, your brain, your personality.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So it's like there is no cookie cutter answer. There is no
No.
right strategy. There's the right strategy for you. And I literally was just on a workshop before we had our interview today. It was a social media training as a, marketing manager. I keep myself educated and what are the trends or whatever. And one of the girls, she said something. She said that social media marketing often oversimplifies strategy because you only have 7 seconds to say something. But what it does, then it sells you a fast track to a dead end. And what you're talking about, how there is not one way to do things, figuring out the right way takes time, right?
It does. And I think that's one of the things that people struggle is they want fast. They want it now. They want it, something that's going to fix their problem in a week or a month. And that's not the reality. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's not a lot of coaches like me out there is because it is a long-term commitment to getting somebody from a place of like chaos to having them hone a system that really works for them. And it is a lot of going back and forth and trying things out and figuring out, what tweaks do you need to make? Because, you can teach a baseline foundation, but there is that longer term learning curve that you have
Mhm.
to go through. You
Yeah.
have to experience it for yourself in order to really find that sweet spot.
Mhm. And from a learning perspective, it's just like you can read a book, you can listen to a podcast, but till you go do the thing, you're
You
not
gotta
going to
do
learn
the
it and
thing.
truly understand it. So
You
I'm
gotta do
curious,
the thing.
what led you specifically to wanting to support female entrepreneurs and mompreneurs? I mean, we talk all the time in marketing about niching down. So how did that become the niche that you wanted to serve?
It really came from my own motherhood journey. And even before then, I loved focusing on women because I felt like we were underserved in the financial education sector. When I was a financial advisor, I would go to meetings with my sort of financial professional team or at banks and things. And the people that we were speaking to would initially talk to my husband. And I was like, hello, I'm the one with the education here. He doesn't know don't talk to him. He doesn't know what we're talking about. And sometimes, given the right credit to the right people, they would, correct themselves. But even still, sometimes I would be completely ignored in meetings and it made me insane. And when I would talk to other women about, their experiences and how did you learn about money, they'd be like, well, my dad's accountant or, this and that. This is what my parents did. And I found that the education was just not there for women. It was all very male dominated and it was very male centric. And there wasn't really any female voice. And so that was kind of where I started. And then motherhood hit. And I realized that the things that I did to manage my finances were unnecessarily complicated and took unnecessarily long amounts of time. And I thought, I don't have that anymore. I have this tiny little creature who now needs me more than I need me right now. And so I need to figure out a way to manage this stuff quickly and efficiently. And
Mhm.
that was when I really honed in on some systems that were just that. They were quick, they were easy, they were efficient, and it was very intuitive and seamless. And I thought, this is who I need to serve, because
Yeah.
these are the people that put themselves last habitually and are going to see the most bang for their buck in terms of results of implementing these really easy systems that's going to give them so much more time, freedom, flexibility, so that they're not staying up unnecessarily, losing sleep over their finances, because they're
Yeah.
probably losing sleep because of other reasons. Let's
Yeah.
not
So I was gonna say we have a
exacerbate the problem.
thing to lose sleep over. We don't want that to be one of the things, but I know it is one of the things that
It
keeps
is
us up.
absolutely one of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think business owners worry about, and I see this a lot in newer business owners, is that like, how much am I taking home? How much am I paying myself? And a lot of women that I are in my community like me, they left a corporate job. And so you very much are in this 9 to 5 mindset. So how do you create a 9 to 5 paycheck without a 9 to 5 job, so that we're not either like constantly stressed out about it and not having enough money, or working 24/7 thinking that that's what we have to do to be able to pay ourselves?
Yes, absolutely. And the other side of that same coin is the women who are still in their 9 to 5s, they're building their businesses and they're not paying themselves at all
Mhm.
because they're worried about the success of their business. And again, women, we tend to put ourselves last. Mothers, we tend to put ourselves last. And so we make sure that everything else is taken care of, including the business, and we forget to pay ourselves. It's two sides of the same coin. And so when you're wanting to create that steady, predictable paycheck from a business where revenue is anything but steady and predictable, you have to set up a system that's going to do that for you. You can't just expect it to present itself like a magical, platter of cookies. It's just going to be like, here you are. You have to do the work and set up the systems. So the
Mhm.
system that I use with my clients and the people that I work with is a multiple different bank account architecture. So having not just one bank account, but a whole slew of them that each do different jobs. And when we're talking about your paycheck, having a dedicated account that is just there to hold the money you pay yourself with. And when money comes into your business, you take a percentage of that revenue and you put it in that paycheck account. Now, if you're on the side of never having paid yourself before, start with like 1 or 2%, because I guarantee you nothing's going to change if you siphon off 1 to 2% to pay yourself. If you're in the boat of wanting to replace a 9 to 5 income, you've left your corporate job, you're worried about that, then maybe it is 99% of your revenue is going into that paycheck account, and that's fine. It's usually one extreme or the other, in all honesty, of the people that I work with, is because they're usually on one end of the spectrum or the other. But it's siphoning that off into that dedicated paycheck account. Now, the hard part is, how much of that paycheck account do you pay yourself with? And when you're trying to build up a nest egg that will create that steady, predictable paycheck, is you have to take a pay cut. You have to, instead of clearing out that bank account every time you pay yourself, you take out anywhere from 60 to 90%, depending on how fast you want that well to fill. And
Mhm.
then you treat it in the same way that most people would treat a traditional well, like I'm talking water well here. When, things are great and it's raining and you're bringing in revenue left, right, and center, the well fills. And then when things get dry, maybe you take some time off, maybe you get sick, your kid gets sick, whatever. I mean, life happens, we all know it. Sometimes things are just seasonal. Then the full well will then create that steady income, even if your business isn't bringing in revenue. And
Mhm.
it's one of those things that takes time, it takes consistency, it takes effort, but it really will serve you for years to come if you can create that system and stay consistent with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And in the beginning, I can understand how when your sales are really inconsistent, it feels like, well, I don't know what to do here. And like, I need a cash infusion and I got one. So, like, now what am I going to do? But it's like creating habits with the behavior so that
Yes.
as your revenue gets more consistent, you've already created that system that you can stick to.
Absolutely. I love what you said about the behavior. Is it's really important. Like I always talk about how it doesn't matter if you're allocating $1.50. Even if it's $1.50, still go through the process of taking that $1.50 and putting it in your paycheck account and paying yourself with it. Because if you can do it when you're making $1.50, then you're going to continue those habits when you're making $150,000.
Mhm.
It's those habits and taking the action consistently that's going to lead to the freedom that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And I think a lot of that does come down to mindset because
Yes.
we have histories that we need to work through. We have habits that we might need to change, limiting beliefs that we need to, work through. So in your opinion, how does strategy and mindset work together when it comes to achieving financial success? Because we can't just do some woo-woo stuff and suddenly have money. So we got to do both, right?
If only. If only. I know, it's funny because I follow a lot of financial, professionals and gurus to sort of, like you said, stay current. And, you know, I hear it over and over again. Mindset is 99% of the thing. And I really disagree with that because you really can't just sit on the couch thinking nice thoughts and expect the magic to just appear. You have to take action. And I hear the word manifest used a lot. And manifest is the definition of manifest is to make real. It's to make it happen. And
Mhm.
so it's more than just the nice thoughts. There's actions that go along with it. You have to take those actions in order for the mindset to work. However, if all you're focused on is the action and inside your head you're thinking, this is going to fail, I'm a failure, I'm bad with money, I'm bad with numbers, I can't make this work, then you will find ways to self-sabotage.
Mhm.
You will find ways to not succeed if all you're telling yourself is, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to be good at this. I'm never going to make this work.
Mhm.
And so if you don't have both those actions, the strategies, as well as a mindset that supports those actions and those strategies,
Mhm.
then you're hooped. You've got to have both working interdependently. And I believe that it really is 50-50. So, you're right. We do have money history. Money, I said at the top of the show, like it's all psychological. And we make financial decisions based on our emotions, based on our psychology, and those really are what drives our financial decisions. We
Mhm.
like to think that they're logic and reason, but really it's what we feel that's going to make you choose to buy something or not choose to buy something. And so, you really have to have those honed in and look into your history. Think about, how were you raised around money? What were your first money memories? And one of my favorite things to do with my clients is to just have them write money at the top of a page and just stream of consciousness, start writing and see what comes up. Because one of the things I find is those early money histories, those habits and lessons and values and beliefs that we developed as young kids often repeat themselves over and over again in our adulthood,
Mhm.
whether we're aware of it or not. And it may not look identical because obviously when you were a kid, you wanted penny candy, or you were saving up to buy a scooter or whatever. And, as adults, we have different goals, but the trends will repeat themselves over and over again.
Mhm.
Um, One of the examples I have of this is in my own life. When I was growing up, I was the youngest of my whole extended family, and everyone was always concerned about who was taking care of me, who was taking care of little Jenny. And that has presented itself in my adulthood of feeling that I need to be cared for. Like I need to make sure that I'm cared for either by parents or a husband or whatever. And so I've had to really work hard to dig into that and change that conversation with myself of, I don't need to be cared for. I am a grown woman who can make her own money and take care of herself. I don't need to be cared for. But it is something that I've had to battle as an adult. And I saw that same pattern presenting itself over and over again in my adult life until I took the time to face it head on,
Yeah.
address it, and change the conversation.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like when you do finally see that pattern, you see that limiting belief, you've taken the time to dig in and do the work to be aware of it. Unfortunately, that's like step one. We've now got to actually work through it. And what I have found is that it it's not an overnight fix. It takes time. And that's a belief that you've been working on or that's been being reinforced in your head for years, decades. So it's going to take time to undo it. And giving ourselves the grace of like, I'm going to keep working on this mindset stuff for a while. I'm going to get better at spotting it, but that we've got to keep doing that work.
And it's never something that you'll be able to tick off a list and say, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm complete with this.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter at what stage of your life you're at, how much you've been working on your money mindset. And it's a little depressing, but it's also a little bit freeing, understanding that you will never be done. You will never be finished working on your financial mindset because there's always another layer. There's always a deeper, something that you can dig up and go through. And you're right. It's not something that you can do overnight. Especially if it's a pattern or a belief that you've held since childhood, that's like a super highway. And when you're trying to change the conversation, alter those values and beliefs, it's almost like you are going from a super highway to a dense forest and that you need to now bushwhack your way through a new path. And
Mhm.
it takes time to level down that path and create, something that's easier to walk down rather than trying to, cut off the super highway. Like it
Yeah.
really is quite difficult, and it does take a lot of work and a lot of consistency to reallocate that brain power to the new pathway rather than going down the what's comfortable.
Yeah. That's such a great analogy. And, in talking about this work, both the mindset work and even the money habits, I'd love to know if you were going to share like one habit to implement when it comes to mindset and one habit when it comes to money management. What would you tell us to make sure that we're starting to implement if we're not already doing it?
Okay, so when you're talking about habits for money management, my favorite is the power hour. So once a week, I have it in my calendar and I have it set out that it's like an appointment. So I if I can't get to it, then I reschedule it just like I would a client appointment.
Mhm.
And I spend an hour with my money once a week. And that is going through my transactions, doing my bookkeeping, paying bills, making sure that everything's on top of it. Because a lot of people will check in with their finances maybe once a month when it's time to pay the bills. And 30 days is a long time.
Mhm.
I can't remember what I did last week, let alone 29 days ago. So if I'm looking at a receipt from a month ago, chances are I'm looking at it and going, what was this? What did I buy? Why did I
Mhm.
do that? Was I even in that store? Like, that's a hard thing to do. Whereas if you're on it once a week, you spend an hour, it's done. You're always on top of the pulse of your finances. You know exactly where you're standing. You know exactly how to make those financial decisions from a place of knowledge and empowerment rather than reactivity.
Mhm.
So that's a strategy habit that I implement with absolutely everyone that I work with is you've got to have your power hour.
And I would
And,
imagine that that's looking at both your business finances and your personal finances, right?
ideally, like I said, I do work, primarily with businesses. So we talk about the business finances, but, as you get good at this, the hour is a long, more than enough time. And so you can totally do both in an hour.
Mhm.
Absolutely. When you're first getting going, it's a little bit sticky. And
Right.
sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to get through everything in that full hour. But like I said, as you progress, and I've got people who I've been with for years, and they've got their power hour down to like a science, and they're in and out in 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And it's very, very seamless and simple. But yeah, absolutely, looking at both is so, so important. And then when it comes to the mindset, the way I kick off my power hour is two things. So the first thing I do is I'm just looking around seeing if I do have some. So I have lemon essential oil at like all of my workstations in my house. And I kick off my power hour with just giving this a sniff because Scent is a very
Mm,
powerful sense.
mhm,
And so I know that when I smell this, my brain immediately goes to money.
mm,
Immediately.
mhm.
Because I have been doing this for so long that I'm already primed to start figuring out like what's going on with my finances because I've done this every single time I've done a power hour for years now. And the second thing I do is I have a little list of all of my financial goals. And they're actually laminated because I'm that person. And I just quickly go through them and I go through my core beliefs, my core values, and the financial goals that I'm working on currently. And I
Mhm.
just, I have a sniff, I flip through my cards of what those all are, and then I get started on my power hour. And it
Yeah.
just reinforces what's going on, what I'm shooting for, what new path I'm trying to bushwhack through,
Mm,
and how I want my life and my business to run.
yeah.
And, reviewing those as often as I can. Like I've got a copy down here in my sort of recording space. I've got some at my desk upstairs. I've got some on my bedside table. And I review them, when I wake up in the morning, when I go to bed at night, before I start working, before I start my power hour. Like they are constantly being reviewed, and the more you see them, the more they're going to sink in, and the more those values are going to start presenting themselves, and the
Oh my
more the
gosh,
conversation
I love
is going
that.
to change.
Like you've really integrated it into your life so
Yeah.
that then you're naturally making decisions based upon those things because it's just become second nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a very lazy person. I am an exceptionally lazy person. And so my goal is, how can I make this easy?
Yeah.
How can I make this easy for myself? Having it sitting within a hand's reach makes it easy.
Mhm.
Having it sitting on my bedside table makes it easy. Making things harder is not going to serve me.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking around for ways that I can make it easier.
Yeah. I love that. Well, you talked about your personal values and that you keep those on a card to review, which I love so much. One of the things that we always ask our listeners as we're kind of wrapping up and getting to know you is what is one of your brand values and how did you land on that?
My brand values are simple, easy, and empowering. So I'm all about, like I said, making things easy
Mhm.
for women, for business owners, so that it actually gets done. If
Yeah.
things aren't simple and easy, then it's not going to get done. And if you are not getting these things done, then you're not in a place of power. You're not feeling proactive with your finances.
Mhm.
And then you're reactive, and that just creates chaos, which creates stress, which we all know. We have all been down that road. So that's why one of the things that I strive for in working within my brand and working with all my clients is that simple and easy.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. All right. So one of our brand values at the Consistency Corner is personal development. So I always love to ask our guests, what is a favorite personal development book that you would recommend?
My favorite book, and I have it in audio form, in digital form, and in hard copy, which I actually happen to have right here, is Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. I love habits. I think the way that we really change our lives is through our habits. Motivation, determination, they're amazing, but they're fickle. Habits are that best friend that's there for you no matter what. They'll be, burying a body with you at 3 a.m. And so creating strategic habits is the way to make change. And, my Little Lemons essential oil is one of my tiny habits.
Mhm.
And the thing that spoke to me about this book and the way that he explains habit formation is it something you can do in 8 seconds? And I
Mhm.
thought, as a mom and as a business owner, I can figure out 8 seconds.
Yeah.
Something, I found a lot of the other habit formation books and strategies required a lot more time and a
Mhm.
lot more commitment. And I thought, it's just too much. But 8 seconds, I can do eight
Yeah.
seconds. And
Figure
so
out
I
the
recommend this
need.
book to anyone.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a
All right.
fabulous book.
Well, speaking of habits, I would love to know something that you are really consistent with, either in your business or your personal life that you're really proud of.
My power hour.
Yeah.
Honestly, that is the thing that has brought more change to my life, both personally and professionally, than anything else.
Yeah.
Being in tune with where I'm standing with my finances personally, where I'm standing with my finances professionally. And now my husband and I are at a point where I have my professional power hour, and then we have a joint power hour together, personal, with our personal finances. And it has completely changed the game for us.
Yeah.
We actually had because we have it on Sunday afternoons, and we sat down yesterday and we walked through, we talked about our goal for the year, what we're working towards. And at the end of it, we both said, I can't believe how much this has changed the game for us in terms of how far we've come in such a short time with our personal finances.
Yeah.
Things got a little chaotic because life. And when we finally sat down, we're like, no, we need to focus on this. And I said, well, let's do a check-in. Let's do a power hour together once a week. This is something that I preach from the rooftops for, why are we not implementing it here with our stuff? And it really has completely changed,
Yeah. And I
how
know a
things are
lot of
going.
people, those financial conversations, those check-ins, they are uncomfortable, they're scary, all sorts of feelings come up. But when you start doing them regularly, it normalizes it. And then it's not so scary and it's not so uncomfortable. It might be the first few times,
Yeah.
but it starts to get
Oh, it gets so
like,
much easier. And then, one of the final tip, I try not to like overload, but one final tip, especially if you have a partner or a spouse that you are, working through some of this stuff with, and they might find that it's a little bit adversarial, rather than sitting at a seat where you're facing one another, sit shoulder to shoulder, because the body language of that is camaraderie. If you're sitting shoulder to shoulder, you're working together. If you're facing one another, it's very combative, and
Mhm.
you're more inclined, just because of the body language, to fight with one another. Whereas if you're sitting shoulder to shoulder, you're team, you're working together toward a joint goal. And, our body language really does affect how we interact with each other. It's why sitting in a car, it's a great time to have a conversation, because you're not focused on just, facing each other and having the fight. You're sitting shoulder to shoulder, and there's, other things to kind of temper that the issue.
Yeah.
And so
That's a
that
great
works
tip.
really, really well, and it can create so much harmony between partners.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great tip. Well, these were all such great tips. And thank you so much for being here. If our listeners are interested in learning more, connecting with you, where do you hang out online and how can they learn more?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at jenpatterson.biz, or you can check out my website, dollardivas.org.
All right. Awesome. Again, Jen, thank you so much for being here. This was a really great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.